friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. In each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Before we dive into the second episode of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast, I need to back up and correct a mistake. I was so excited to get the first episode out that I neglected some very important things. This podcast only exists because I was fortunate enough to have been chosen as a host of the second season of the One Lesson at a Time podcast, created by the amazing Courtney Pentland and produced by the sadly now defunct School Library Connection. Without Jane, Seth, and Fatima at SLC, the podcast you're listening to right now wouldn't exist. Their excitement for helping school librarians learn and share is incredible. Their enthusiasm for the episodes we created together was invigorating. Their thoughtful suggestions helped me find my way through a new venture, and their unflagging enthusiasm made me think I wasn't as bad at this as I feared. So, with apologies, here's a belated and heartfelt thank you to the SLC team for helping me find something I didn't know I would love so much. Also, huge thanks to Amy Herman, host of the School Librarians United podcast. It was her guidance and suggestions that helped me figure out how to put this podcast together, and it was her encouragement that made me think it was a good idea. So thank you so much, Amy, and thank you everybody who's listening. With that said, let's get into our second episode. We're going to hear from Molly Dettmann, who's got an amazing lesson called Oh Meme, Oh My. Let's find out more. Hi, everybody. I am here with Molly Dettmann, and I'm very excited. She's got such a fun and really thought-provoking lesson that I love. So, Molly, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Molly Dettmann, and I'm a teacher librarian at Norman North High School in Norman, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. You guys are having some fun out there, I'm sure, on the high plains.
With the wind coming sweeping down the plains.
So, how did you end up in school librarianship? What was your path?
So originally I went to my grad program for library school and for public libraries, and I actually worked at a public library in teen and adult services. But I always loved going on school visits and just working with teens more one-on-one. And my husband was a public educator. My mom was a public educator. My grandma was a public, like everyone in my family, and they kind of told me to avoid it. But then I was like, no, I really kind of want to try it out. So I was very fortunate to get my first school librarian job as a high school librarian, and literally have loved it ever since. Like I just can't imagine doing anything but school librarianship. And I've done that now going on 6 years.
That's awesome. Congratulations. 6 years is outstanding, especially in education, I'll tell you.
I'm a veteran now. It didn't take long.
I had sort of a similar experience when I got into the school library. It really just felt like home. Like it felt like the place I was supposed to be. It's really wonderful when you get that sense of place, of home. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the lesson that we're going to be hearing about? Sort of how did you come to arrive at this lesson?
Yeah, so I came to this with our current issues teacher. So we have a current issues course, and we had this teacher who had been teaching it for a really long time. He just retired last year, and he wanted to do more. Media had very much changed throughout his teaching career, so he wanted some help with the library on how to kind of teach those media literacy skills and understanding how to fight misinformation and fake news and all of that stuff. So we had done some things with him before, but then I finally got to really get like a solid week with his classes, where then I developed this lesson where we kind of worked through different aspects of information and media literacy each day. I also got a lot of really great resources like Civic Online Reasoning, News Literacy Project. Those resources really came out with so many great bits of curriculum and things that then I was able to kind of pick from them and build the lessons and activities for students to kind of get hands-on experience with finding information, debunking misinformation, and kind of getting right in the middle of it. Because they already are, they just don't realize it.
Oh, absolutely. And I've got to really give some credit to the teacher that was saying, I really want to work on this because I feel like a lot of times teachers kind of have the lane that they're in and they're content to stay in it. And so it's really great that he was willing to reach out. And I mean, it's always great when we get to collaborate with school librarian and teacher in a classroom to kind of bring something maybe a little bit different to the students. So I love that you're able to sort of bring in maybe a little more technology, modern, and getting them, like you said, thinking about the thing that they're in the middle of that they often don't even realize that they're in the middle of. So this lesson itself, it's called Oh Meme Oh My, yes?
Oh, yes. The meme. They love to meme, and I just meme at them back.
I love it. So maybe you can walk us through some of the basics of this. What is the sort of the primary objective, would you say?
So the primary objective is to really understand the difference between information that's just shared on the internet or through social media and things that are purposely misleading. So what I start off with are some like basic definitions, which there are, a lot of different definitions for, dismiss and malinformation. Mm-hmm. I kind of walk through a bunch of examples. And then like the first part of the first day, I really have them just kind of find examples themselves. Online. And it could also be things that they've just heard about. Like once they understand those definitions and we really look through those examples, they find their own examples of each of them and then we kind of discuss. And I usually also have them work in groups because it is kind of hard to do this individually and they have a lot more fun when they can work with each other and kind of split up the different kinds of misinformation. So like someone's looking for false context and someone else is looking for manipulated content. And so I have them do that to begin with. And then I flip it where I have my own examples that I have found where I give each group 4 examples. One is true, and like some of them are memes, some of them are social media screenshots. It's kind of a mix of all of them, and one is true. One is actually true. The rest of them are false, but either way, they have to then also, we kind of go over lateral reading, and they have to practice that lateral reading to prove which one's true and then why the other ones are false. So, which that one's always really fun because I'll throw in some like really goofy memes. Like I have one where it's like, all bobcats are named Bob. And it's just, a meme of a bobcat. And that always throws them off. They're like, well, I mean, yeah, because they're called bobcats. And I'm like, well, come on, y'all. Let's think about this a little bit more. I'm not trying to trip you up with that. That was just like, I couldn't think of a fourth one. And I found this bobcat meme online. Whereas some are like, so Rumor Guard through the News Literacy Project I love it so much. It has so many, weekly, they have different social media misinformation examples. So actually, this year, before I had the examples, they had to do some lateral reading. This year, I actually started with when they were gathering their own examples. I gave them that website just to look at the examples from there so that then they could pick one and kind of decide what kind of misinformation, because it was already all right there and that work was already done for them. So then they could really focus on their understanding of the definition and also learning about like, oh, well, I did see that video of that drone strike and I totally thought it happened in Russia, but it actually didn't. So I've had some really good conversations with students kind of in both examples of them finding their own through those resources and then debunking the ones that I find for them.
I love too with News Literacy Project that they're free resources, and they're high quality
so
free resources. Yeah,
so high quality. It's like, any day they're going to make us pay for it, and I'm going to be so sad. Yeah, they're going to get my money.
So I just want to sidetrack for a second. You had said that the teacher that you originally started working with on this retired, but you also are doing this lesson this year. So has this spread to other classes?
So it still is really a big unit that happens in those current issue classes. I will say as the school librarian, one of the school librarians at my school, I also volunteer for anything and everything to get me more involved in my school. So a couple years back, I volunteered to be our new teacher liaison. And
nice.
So I worked directly with new teachers. So when my previous teacher retired, this course went on to go to like 3 different new teachers who were more than happy because I got to know them through like the new teacher training and all of that. They were more than happy for me to be like, hey, you're bringing your class in for this week for cool lessons, right? And they were like, yes. Yeah. And they were so much fun. And what they brought to those lessons was each one was a little different. Like one, specifically teaches an international problems class. So then we kind of did the same activities, but on an international news scale. And then the other new current issue teachers, like they had a lot of fun with it and really enjoyed it. But luckily, like I already built that relationship of support with them, with the new teacher liaison aspect, that they were very much like, oh wait. And then I also was like, this is a tradition that we want to keep following, right? And then they were just happy to have someone to work with and do something a little different, especially with a new course that they were not familiar with teaching.
Yeah, when you can bring them a completed lesson and say, here you go, just show up. That's definitely a big weight off of their shoulders. That's awesome. And I love, too, that you kind of pointed out that it can be sort of customized to different areas. Like you've got the international teacher working on maybe slightly more broad ideas, whereas current events, other teachers might be a little more localized. That's great. Like it's just so adaptable as a lesson. So they are getting all of these different memes. They're looking at them. They're analyzing. They're doing lateral reading. These are outstanding skills for them to be getting some practice in. And I love that they are actually using the skills. You're not just saying, here's a skill. Next time you're doing something, use it. Like you're giving them the hands-on practical knowledge with it, which is great. So once they've gotten to the point where they're doing some lateral reading and they're kind of analyzing, do they go someplace from there with the pieces?
So we use Canvas as our learning management system. So I always have like a written component to everything, an individual reflection. So like in their group, so I previously have been using Google Jamboard. I know that's going away soon, sad face. But I am starting to look at some other like kind of digital whiteboards for them to collaborate and work on in their groups. Like Canva has some good ones for when I do this next semester. But so they do that collaboratively on those digital platforms. But then I always have them do it like just an individual writing reflection on Canvas that they turn in, where then it kind of like goes back to ask, kind of almost an exit ticket-ish, where it's asking them kind of like what they learned from this and like what they contribute to their group, what is something that stood out to them, how could they use the skill in other ways in their like daily news media, understanding. And sometimes I will have them write on paper too. Like sometimes I just want to put the computers away after we've computered a little bit too much all day. So sometimes I'll do paper, I'll do Canvas, so that then I can read those reflections and get a better understanding of, okay, did I really teach this concept well enough? Do we need to revisit some things the next day before we move on to the next part of the activity? I really think just that kind of just having that like written component and the individual reflection really helps. And then what they do later on, so we usually do that at the very beginning of that semester class, and then the rest of the course, they're visiting and finding their own current issue articles and reflecting on them and sharing them with the class. And so when I've talked to the teachers and check back in, they get a better sense of like finding reliable news about objective news about what's happening around the world, or they might find like a misleading meme that then they use as their current issue article for the day of like, hey, they're saying they're misinforming about this particular topic, and this is what this news site is saying.
I love that. So the kids are not only using the skills, but also kind of carrying the lesson forward in a different way to sort of identify when they're spotting these things in the wild and bring them to the class to kind of for discussion. That's great. Huh. So do you ever find them getting into their own meme making to sort of like either promote or deny any particular areas? Do they like come in with like, hey, I made a meme for the class about what we're talking about?
I haven't seen that yet. Mostly they just like the memes and things that are on TikTok, and they'll just laugh about those. I did see, what was it? It was in international problems class. I always also, I guess I really start everything off with like, where do you get your news from? Just to kind of get a sense of where and social media is the biggest one. And this one kid, there was this TikTok that was Bikini Bottom news, and it was like the little like tuna fish from SpongeBob, but he was actually it was actual news, but it was just that little like talking head fish. And it was really funny, and I learned something that day. So sometimes they do look at news, but in kind of goofy ways.
I love that. I mean, if they're able to sort of spot check it and make sure that they're getting good information, why not? Like, why not add something fun to it? Oh, man.
Like, I was like, this is a cartoon, so it's clearly probably joking about things. But then I actually watched one with this kid, and I was like, oh, that did happen yesterday. And they're just reporting it. Interesting. They're a fish, though.
That is not one that I've heard of. I'm going to have to see if I can dig that up or fish that up. I don't know. Catch one of those? Ooh, that's bad. So it sounds like the kids are really engaging with the skills, with the lessons. And it seems like you've been getting some pretty good feedback from both the students and the teachers. Is there anything in particular that the teachers have come to you maybe after this lesson to say like, oh, here's something we've noticed since we did this?
I think just in general, them getting their students a better understanding of where to find good news, or like how to decipher through the misinformation. I think that's been helpful. Whereas the couple days before because usually we don't do it like the very first week of school, because the very first week of school is so hectic. Usually it's kind of that second or almost even third week that we really dive into the content. They'll say that like when they're just kind of pulling articles and just kind of working with the students to kind of get their feet wet with that class for the semester. I mean, yeah, students are like pulling up like very clearly biased articles or things that are like clearly clickbait or something but they just don't have that understanding yet of what that means. And then that kind of turns around when they're like pulling out because like one teacher in particular has them find an article each week and write about it and how that's a current issue happening in the world. And she said that the articles got a lot better after we did that week of lessons.
Oh, I have no doubt. And it's funny because so often we think of kids as being these digital natives that just because it's online, they must know it. And I have never really subscribed to that notion. I'm like, no, we're all people and we're all going into this strange universe that kind of messes with our heads and the way we understand information. So once you get to point out to them, like, here are some things to look for, they're really good at picking it up, and they start to notice like, oh, the stuff that I was doing before, maybe that's not quite the best habits that I could be building. So it's really...
I was getting real upset about that article, and that's what they want from me, and I'm not going to let that happen. I had a kid tell me that. He's like, I'm not going to let that happen to me anymore. And I was like, okay.
I love that.
I did my job.
Yes,
because
seriously.
we also talk about headlines and just like they're really trying to get an emotional response. So then you share, and they make money, and this happens, and they're like, what? They get upset in that moment, and I'm just like, I know, it got me too. And I also always kind of wrap things up by showing them we are really fortunate at my school to have database subscriptions to Gale Opposing Viewpoints and Gale Global Issues that curates, new news on those topics daily. And so I also kind of wrap it up with like showing them how to use that and find current event articles and narrow your search down between viewpoints that are opinion-based things versus news versus academic journals. And so I kind of give them that so then they have like a solid library resource to use in addition to, maybe they also just look at, news on certain, bikini bottom news is still very valid, but we got the library resources in there as well.
That's awesome. What a great way to tie it all together too. So, you had sort of pulled a lot of, some of your resources from a lot of great free online sources. And you've got some great databases. Were there any other particular tools or materials that you kind of went, oh, that's something that I should pull in, or that here's something that I use as part of this that we didn't hit on yet?
No, I mean, the other big one is Google Jamboard. Again, rest in peace. Future rest in peace. Just having that collaborative whiteboard space was really nice. I mean, I think you still could do this. Like, if you built your definitions in like a Google Doc, or you built it in a slideshow, you could pull that up and then they could use like a whiteboard, or they could use a piece of paper. I mean, they could still like do their searching and then just like physically write out their, debunking what they found or like their examples.
I love it. I mean, always good to have that alternative method to get there, because the technology is going to fail when you need it most. So so you've been doing this for a couple of years. What kind of changes have you made as you've sort of evolved the lesson?
I think the biggest thing is that once I saw how this just basic like definitions, discussion, having them find their own examples and then kind of giving them some examples to debunk. That formula works really well with a lot of different subjects. So you'd actually asked earlier, and I didn't really answer this well, but you'd asked earlier about different subjects. I have done this with a couple different subjects. Like, this has worked really well in science classes where they are wanting to do some science information literacy, where then, like, all my examples are science misinformation, and we talk about it from that lens. And then, like, when we're doing research for, like, our big papers in our English classes, like, we can still, like, pull specific create like subject-specific examples, but then do the same kind of practicing those skills, and then it works really, really nicely.
That's how whenever I get the chance, if I'm going to make a lesson, I try to make it, here's what the skill is, but now use it to actually, pull up content or to find what you're looking for. And that way it's kind of embedding the skill along with, oh, here's something fun we did in class. So I love that you're bringing it into different subjects too. I mean, it's such a wonderfully adaptive lesson that can be used in so many different ways. And I could totally see this scaling up or down for grade levels too. Like, I could absolutely see this going to middle school and probably even down to the grade school level. If you were kind of selective about how you chose some of your memes, I could see that absolutely working.
Oh yeah. I mean, I will say, so another great resource I've used to kind of build up this kind of, these lessons is the book Developing Digital Detectives. That book is excellent, and I will say that one has some really good lessons and examples for middle school and elementary. Like, I mean, I let my kids find their own examples. They're high schoolers. They might find certain, things about vaccines, things about more controversial topics. I'd say vaccines because that was definitely one that popped up. There's definitely this really weird misinformation where it had like a really picture of a really gross looking banana, and then the headline was like, this banana is going to give you AIDS. And that is what they always pull up, no matter what. And of course, that weird looking banana is not giving anybody. That's not how AIDS works. That's not how HIV. That's some hardcore science misinformation there that we debunk very quickly together. So that's not appropriate for like an elementary school kid or even a middle school kid to go searching around for that. So Digital Detectives has some really great lessons and ideas that are, again, working with these same skills and concepts, but then they have more curated examples to use that are more appropriate for those grade levels.
Nice. I'll have to make sure I throw the link into the show notes so that if people want to check that out, they can do that. Are there any particular kind of supports built in for either ELL learners or special needs learners that can kind of help to differentiate the lesson?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is having them work in groups and work together has really helped. I mean, those current issue classes, they have, that's an elective course. So, I mean, there are 9th graders through 12th graders. There are students at all different levels. And so I've seen some really good work come from having them work together in groups and just kind of being a presence around while they're doing that work to answer questions or explain something a little further. I have English language learners to where we've got translation options, especially anything digital. I can get it, we have translation features on their MacBooks, speech to text. I mean, being able to if they find an article, if maybe they're not the reading level to comprehend it well. We always do the speech to text so that we can listen to it, and we'll find kind of a corner for them to listen to their article that they find that debunks whatever, because that's happened a lot. So I just kind of keep an eye out on everybody during that work time and then just offer them those accessible options.
I love that. And I love when we can use technology for a positive, because sometimes it seems like all we do is just screen time, like you were saying before. But that's a great way we can use it as an adaptive technology for our students. So what advice do you have for someone who's maybe going to try this lesson for the first time? Anything they should kind of have in mind as they get ready to go?
I would say keep it real simple to begin with. Maybe you just do the lesson where they're finding their own examples and you're going through those definitions. Or, use one of maybe the digital detectives from their evidence locker. They've got some really great starters there. I think just making sure you are as aware as you can be of the ins and outs of lateral reading and what examples you're using in your own when you're kind of going through those definitions. I think just being as perfect, because I definitely, when I have my examples, I honestly just pull them, I add new examples to a Wakelet that I keep. And I'll just see something on the artist formerly known as Twitter, and I'll just be like, that's misinformation being shared. Screenshot, I'll share that. So then when I'm sharing examples to the kids, I'm just very, I'm like, I found this on the internet, like yesterday. Like my mom shared this on Facebook. What a goober. Actually, one of my new examples for this lesson is the title slide is a screenshot of a text between me and my mom because she just texted me randomly one day this summer and said, "Did you know Andrew Garfield is his dad created Garfield?" And I was like, "No, Mom, he did it." And then I sent her the Snopes article about how that was like super debunked and not real. And then she goes, "Oh, Lordy, Twitter got me again." And so I do start off. That's my first slide of like, sometimes, people like my mom. Do you think my mom's a terrible person because she thought this was real? And they're all like, "Well, I don't know your mom." And then I'm like, "Come on, answer this for me." And they're like, "No, she's just," I'm just like, "She's, 70 years old. She just, this is a little goober." And then we move on because I think really starting that conversation with them about how, like, some people do share this maliciously because they want to make money or they want to cause chaos, but some people really do it just because they don't know. And so I'm not teaching them that, that their parents are bad people because maybe they've shared some misinformation now that they understand what that is. We just have to be better now that we know to help others with that. I mean, of course, my mom was like, "Oh, cool, sorry."
Yeah, I think most people, like, when you're able to gently offer them like well, maybe this is the actual thing to check out instead. It seems like most people are pretty receptive to that. And I love that you're able to bring a personal example to the class to kind of be like, look, it's not just out in the world somewhere. This is like actual everyday kind of conversation that's going to happen.
This is my mom texting me. So I think also just some advice would be to understand what your purpose is and make sure you meet that, and just understand that every kid comes from a different background and that some of this might be like huge revelations to them. But again, you're not trying to say that like where they grew up or how they grew up is bad or wrong, or if maybe if something like that is, if their mom has shared that the silly Andrew Garfield thing. Just make sure to like be aware of that because that could happen very quickly, and you don't want anyone to feel bad because of misinformation that they didn't mean to share.
Yeah. We're going to now go in a completely different direction for a second here, and we're going to have a book break. So I'm curious, what is a book that you've enjoyed? And it could be something that's just for you. It could be something for students, for staff, professional, just for fun, whatever. What's a book that's been grabbing your attention?
Ooh, okay, so I'm in love with the manga series Blue Lock.
Okay.
So I'm on volume 20 right now. So Blue Lock, the whole premise, it's almost like Squid Games, but with soccer, but nobody dies. So, but it is kind of that intense. So it's this whole premise is Japan wants to win the World Cup, and this guy has this crazy idea to do this whole training thing to where he's going to produce the world's best striker, and Japan's going to end up winning the World Cup. So he gets all these teenagers who are really good at soccer and puts them in these like scenarios and situations. Like first they start off in teams, and then like, as they're winning and making the most goals, like people move on and up, and then there's like other people who come in out of everything. And it's really, the big intense thing is like, if they get eliminated, they can never play soccer again. So like it is so it's super cutthroat. All these boys have a reason why they want to be the best striker, and like this is like pushing their soccer skills to the limits, and it's just so exciting, and the artwork's really good, and it is such a good series. I would recommend it for like high school and up because there's a little bit of language, and it is pretty intense, but it is just, I mean, like you watch Ted Lasso and enjoy soccer because it's like feel good happiness. This is really intense, and you're just so in it, but also for like, I mean, I would equate it to like the same bit of like you're just like really in it.
I love it. Okay, nice. I'm not usually a sports person, but you might be changing my mind on this one. That's Blue Lock?
Yes, Blue Lock. So the whole like thing that they're kind of locked, it's called Blue Lock, is the whole, like they are like literally like sequestered off from everybody else and in this like situation where they're playing soccer till the death of their careers if they don't win.
Huh. To the death of their careers.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's died. It has gotten real intense, though. And then sometimes there's some funny bits, but I just really enjoy it.
That's awesome, man. I love it. So, okay. Thank you. That's an awesome recommendation. I love it. people are going to love this lesson. I know I love this lesson. If they want to track you down someplace, if they want to touch base with you in some way, where on social media can they find you? Where can they go to if they want to say hi to Molly?
Yeah, so my personal stuff is at Molly Dett. So I'm still on Twitter till the bitter end, but I've joined Blue Sky.
Yay.
And then Instagram. You can hit me up there. My school library accounts it's at Norman North Library, and it's on Instagram and Facebook. So on there, I share a lot of the cool stuff that we do in our library and a lot of book fun.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing with us. I know I am excited to get my hands on this lesson and start playing with it, and I'm sure other people are going to be too.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only the link to the lesson plan we discussed, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be well, and be good.